gonna start it. So we are going live now. So hello, I'm Defina Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of Covenant Maine. And wait, sorry, a minute. Okay, are we ready? I'm gonna do it again. So hello, I am Defina Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of Covenant Maine. And today we are doing our Academy 101. Our focus today is really on building a smarter inventory system. But I think more fundamentally, our real focus today, we're just keeping it plain, is just having real conversations about how stylists can grow their business with extensions, with data-driven solutions so that they're profitable, and that they have the information to know how to make that jump. And having this conversation with two amazing guests. So I'm really here just to facilitate. We have our perspective as a brand, but I think we really rely on guys' expertise on this. So I'm really here to facilitate today. And first, I would like to introduce Ashley Tolliver Williams. She's a salon owner and business strategist. And we've invited you here today to more focus on how to plan inventory to meet your clients' demand, maximize cash flow, which is the word we all love, and just ensure your team never misses an install and what that practically looks like, within a salon environment. So I would just love to give you a second, Ashley, just to fill in some color on your background and your salon and your history here.
So I started as a hairstylist, as probably 95% of salon owners, and then started a salon about 3 years into being in the industry. And it was an accidental salon ownership type thing. Salon I was at was closing, and I just ended up being there. I never really wanted to own a salon, that whole story. And my background was I had spent 3 years studying math in college. So this industry, coupled with that side of the world, it was a very push-pull thing for me for a while to sort of figure out, like, where do I fit and how do I exist here? But eventually I figured it out. And after many years of really bad business ownership, started to do some things right and expanded that first salon and so on and so forth. So I've been a salon owner for it will be 20 years in January. So from there, I got into education, a lot of those things, and then started running business programs for a manufacturer. And in doing that, we started doing a lot of research and diving in through the background of sales and a lot of people in sales leadership to study salons and salon owners and the things that needed to be connected in. If this makes sense, it's not just general business that the salon owner needs. It's the ability to do business with the creative brain, and what are the things that really help move those things forward, move those things along. So from there, I then started 6 years ago a wholesale distribution company that focuses on profitability of salons. And so I've been in lots of different facets of the industry. And in doing that, have studied the inside and numbers of probably 1,000 plus different salons, and really finding ways to help salons understand a little bit more about their business and the sides of their business that most of the industry doesn't focus on, because a lot of us focus on the pain points of salon ownership instead of what salons actually need. So I'm working on focusing on what salons actually need.
Well, I love that. And I think this is, as I said, I think it's the best time of year to be having this discussion. And with that, I also would like to introduce Allison Hurley King, and she is a CEO and partner of Beauty 360 Consulting. Yeah. But she also is so much more. We've had a lot of time to talk today. A very impressive career as well. And also another spreadsheet loving, data-driven MBA. Stylist, which I think is such a fun thing to be able to bring the three of us together for this. But can you give us a little bit more as well on your background?
Yeah, kind of your story. I started in Votech. My dad joked with me that I had to get the highest credit diploma. So without him knowing, I signed up for cosmetology because that still met his requirement, but got me to do something a little more fun. And years later, You know, I've been in this industry both and started in chain world, ran up to 1,200 salons. Used to run the salons for Ulta Beauty as well, and got off the hamster wheel, for lack of a better word, and started owning salons myself. So we've got salons here in Brooklyn. So again, kind of the same thing, fell into it, fell in love at the same token, and have had a beautiful ride, being able to coach people from around the country with all different backgrounds, with all different expertises. And, you know, I think my niche is not putting a square peg in a round hole, right? How do you get people who love what they do to make money at it? And, not just behind the chair, but as a business as well. So we've got a lot of things in common.
Absolutely.
And I think today from, you know, from the Covenant Maine standpoint, our perspective of having this conversation is there's a lot of changes in laws on how you treat, you know, we talked about like taxes and tips and inventory and just thinking, you know, stepping into a time of year where it's a great time to look at what worked, what didn't work, and then what you want to bring in for next year. And you can't start that in the actual year that you want to start. And I think people are getting ready to go into kind of like busy mode. And so we just want to plant the seeds now of things to be thinking about now, so that when you're, you know, closing out your books for the year, you have, you know, different options to approach, just leveraging everybody else's knowledge. I'm like, if we don't get to learn from one another, then what's the point? So, I have a lot of prepared questions, and actually I've shared them both with you, but I think also the beauty of having more of a discussion, and the people who are joining us live as well, want this to kind of guide what makes sense and where we can add the most value in the short time that we have. So we'll have time for questions at the end, but if there's something that you feel is helpful, we'll make sure that we can like think on our toes for it, if that makes sense. So I want to get from you, Ashley, like what strategically, why is inventory planning so important? And like, what does that look like for you? Like, what's the ideal, like paint the ideal picture of like when a salon has this down, especially like an extension focused salon, like paint the picture of why it matters and what it looks like and what it unlocks.
Tell me the very first, for some reason it cut out just on the very first sentence that you asked. So just ask the question one more time so I hear the first part of what you
So my first question is, why is strategic inventory planning so important for a salon, especially an extension-based salon, and really just painting the picture of like why it's important and what it looks like when it all goes well.
So I'm going to come at this from two different places, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. Number one, strategic inventory, whether it is traditional retail, it's extensions, any side of it, strategic inventory is most important because it's what consumers expect first. So in our industry, a lot of times we feel like we're up against all of these other businesses and people, and whether they're big corporations, if it's in the traditional like shampoo retail space, or even if it were big retailers in the extension space who are sort of winning the game a lot of times when it comes to clients going and purchasing things on their own or whatnot. When you have strategic inventory practices, you're supporting what consumers are expecting in order to look at you as a place that they can get whatever they need done today, for instance, right? So you're at a competitive advantage within this bigger overall market by having a plan in place for that. On the other side of it, and I think this is something that is missed a little bit by our industry, is sometimes we don't get involved with the strategic planning of inventory because we look at inventory as a cost, right? We look at it as an expense when it's an investment, and simply understanding that overall bigger investment aspect can give the confidence to do the strategic inventory planning that then fulfills what the consumer expects from a business that they're doing business with.
Okay. And you know, a question for both of you, and feel free to kind of answer whoever feels they have the most say on it. But my question is, in terms of stages of like, especially with salons and getting started in extensions, I observe, and I think we've observed as well, there's people who, there's like this messy middle part of it. There's like the stage of getting started, you have a couple of consultations and you're coloring, you order as needed. And then there's, you know, the big salons that have a hair wall and they have back inventory and they're just rocking and rolling. And then there's just a lot of people who get stuck in between. And so I just, you know, want to kind of get your perspectives on if you could help explain why, or, you know, how you approach for people who might feel stuck in that middle, you know, how to get out of it.
So I'll just share two thoughts. You know, number one, data matters, right? And so one of the things we've talked about is everything they want to carry or sell should be in their salon software so that they can sell through the transaction and track what moves, right? Data is powerful. So that allows me to know, while my manufacturer might tell me these are our best shades, are those my best shades? And if they are, then now as I start to build inventory and make a strategic investment, I start to know what should that investment look like. And so for me, it starts with data. And then the second piece of that is, what's your plan to make the investment come to life, right? Like, don't just have a dream, but like, what are your steps? And so if you're now going to go from ordering to stocking, right? How does the conversation change in your salon to go from getting people to know they can get it done now? Like, does it become part of every consultation that you do? Does it, you know, does it become part of your push marketing? Like, what are those things that you do that get you over the tipping point between I just spent the cash and I've got to get the cash return? So those would be my first two steps that I might give in how I would get started with that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you were saying that, and we're even looking at working on stocking, it doesn't matter what you're bringing in regard to inventory. But if I think about extensions specifically, when you're starting an extension business, you don't know who's going to walk into your business. Like, you don't know, and I don't mean walk in literally, like, but just, you don't know who, when they schedule that consultation, maybe you have a virtual setup, or maybe you've seen pictures of them, or maybe you know a little bit about what you're getting into whenever they walk in. But if you don't have a system for that and they're coming and sitting in your chair for the first time, and not only you don't have the inventory to support doing that service, let's say today, if you wanted to be able to do that, but also you don't know what colors or shades that you're going to need to stock in the beginning. But if you start looking at it like, this is something that I ultimately want to work up to, and start saving for that investment, essentially, even if you were just stocking one of each of the shades, right, to start. And then, like Allison said, in the data, start building your data of what you're seeing. Because the thing about marketing in our industry, especially if you're marketing hair, as in you're posting on social media and you're posting hair pictures, there's the consumers that are going to find you are likely going to find, it's like finds like, right? They're likely, the blondes are going to find you if you're posting blondes, the brunettes are going to find you if you're posting brunettes. You're going to start seeing more of those things repeat themselves. And so whatever it is that you're focusing on, your data by what you've built already is going to speak, but also you're going to be able to predict that a little bit because of what and who you're marketing to. And so starting to build some of those foundational pieces so you can build your inventory up will help in that place to start getting to a place. Like, you don't have to feel like you have to bring in, 3 of every color to start. Like, just bring in one so you can start building your data and then allow it to go from there.
Great.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point as well with, it's like you can make the investment, but you also need to make the investment in the strategic communication plan across social, the front desk, just all of these partners involved in getting, what does the consultation now look like? It's changed to let everybody know, like, oh, we have 2 more new certified stylists, or we have a new offering that's just a taste of extent, even marketing the messaging. And so for you, Ashley, have you found that that's the case within your salons as well? And how do you kind of train and help implement not just like the investment, but the communication strategy around the investments that you've made?
Around what we're doing?
Yeah. Like the services offered and.
So we look at I would say in two different ways. In the salon overall, we send out a newsletter every single week, and there's always communication about things that are going on. And if we're launching a new product, we're going to have a launch plan around that product that's falling into that newsletter. But we do a lot of storytelling and soft selling through that newsletter, with sort of right down there below the signature of the close of the newsletter, seeing actual general, more promotional offerings and things like that that would be down there to remind clients that they're there and that they exist. Beyond that, we work with each one of our stylists, which my team is very, very small at this point, but we work with each individual stylist on the specific area that they are focused on and on direct marketing actually to consumers. So what we're doing is ensuring that they are honed in specifically on the area that they're wanting to grow and expand versus in our salon as a whole, we may have multiple stylists. Like, we're not really a branded salon where we do one specific thing, if that makes sense. We have a lot of different stylists who do a lot of different things.
Yes.
So we're working on their individual marketing plans and making sure that those are connected to what they're ultimately trying to grow in their business.
Okay. Love that. Now, in terms of like working in partnership with the brands that you stock and keep in stock, what are some of the tips that you would give to stylists or salon owners to leverage support or resources or data even that partners such as Covenant Main or your color line or your, wet line, how can they be in service to making sure that the investment and that you really have a good inventory plan as well?
How can we be?
What suggestions would you give for salons to leverage their partners? What data, whether it's like vendor planning or we're seeing, this is working in your area. These are the SKUs that we find tend to do well. What are some tips and tricks you could give?
Oh my gosh, this is such an important question. Because I think that business owners do not realize their power on one hand. And when I don't mean their power, like their power, I mean the power of partnership. I don't think they realize that. I think in a lot of places we sit like this to people who are in sales with brands. And I think it's a real disservice to your business. On the other hand, what you don't a lot of times think about is, well, we sometimes in our general area may look at our salon as if it's a competitive entity, which I actually think is also a disservice that we do to ourselves, to look at ourselves as if we're competing with the salon down the street. In reality, anyone in sales who is serving this industry has connection to so many salons and so many different types of businesses and knows so much about things that are working and that are not working. And if you actually allow that person to have a little bit of a window into your business, they can actually help, they can be such an asset to helping create a plan that they've actually seen work in people's businesses versus just looking on Instagram or trying to dream it up yourself. Like, the people that are your partners can really be a huge asset. And I would be doing quarterly planning with them and monthly check-ins every single month to make sure that the plan was operating and moving along smoothly.
I agree completely. And I think a couple of things that I love to bring to the party is data.
Yes.
Right. So literally this morning, I've got a couple vendor meetings. My planning with vendors starts the 24th of this month and finishes the first week of December. And I'm literally bringing, what are my KPIs? Like, how is my business over last year? What's my color business, my extension business, how's my retail by brand, things like that. Where am I seeing the biggest growth? Where do I wish I would do better? Right. What promotion worked great for me last year? What one stunk? All of that stuff, because that just gives them context on my business to allow me to have that conversation that you spoke to, Ashley, and really leverage their strengths. I mean, again, as we've spoken, you have visibility to hundreds of salons, right? Yeah. And in different parts of the country and different price ranges and, all of the things, right? And, something that might have worked somewhere else, you might be able to just zhush and it be something perfect for you. And so I just think leveraging that resource leveraging their assets when you can, so that you look more like a savvy brand versus a mom and pop. And also kind of knowing what their focus is going to be so that you can kind of play along with it, right? Like if I'm carrying a brand that also sells online, when are they doing their big promotions? And maybe I do the same one when they do it, so that I'm now not competing with them. When they do their big sale of the year, I do the same sale, and then I do different stuff the rest of the year. Like how do we become extensions of each other, not, no pun intended, versus being two separate things?
Exactly. And also I think as we're looking at like, okay, it's the end of the year and you're looking at doing inventory and getting an understanding of like what you might be overstocked in and what you're understocked. I think a lot of times stylists kind of sit and they don't share that information. And there is so much of the brand that you might be working with. There are ways that they can work in partnership with you. Like nobody wants, like inventory, as you said, it's an investment, but gone wrong. It can be fire, burning and you're like just cash for your business. And so just finding ways to work together in partnership to, whether it's giveaway to make it, do you guys have any insight on how brands might?
Well, and one of the things that we've spoken about is I always joke, my mom always said, if you don't ask, you always get no. Right. And the reality is volume matters, right? The more I buy, the more creative a manufacturer is going to be with me. Right. But ask the question. I've had times where I blew through a holiday set that nobody else was selling, and my sales rep knew somebody who'd been trying to get rid of them, and I didn't like the other ones. So we swapped, right? And then I was back in business for the thing I was moving like this, and they were back in business in what they were able to sell. Just have those meaningful conversations, whether it's helping you find somebody you can swap inventory with, whether it's buying into something new that might give you some value on something old. I mean, there's lots of creative ways to get things done. And then I'm going to take you back to like, talk to your accountant in tax planning. Like one thing I learned very early in owning salons, because I'm sorry, I want every tax advantage that you can get, is talk to your accountant early. Like I remember I was swapping brands, and it was a brand that didn't think they needed to swap in inventory with me back in the day when that was less common. And I had to figure out, how do I get out of all this old stuff? And I come from corporate brands. And so I didn't want like the clearance bin. Like that looks crappy. I wanted to look in stock and beautiful. Right. And I ended up talking to my accountant going, well, I don't want to do this as a donation because then I can only write off half of it. I want to write off all of it. Like, how can I do that? And so we brainstormed a marketing promotion that I did. I actually did a big event here in New York City, the Centers Against Domestic Violence. And because of how we did some of the marketing and things like that, we donated it to the Center Against Domestic Violence. We did hair there and things like that. But because of how we marketed it, I was able to write the whole thing off as a full write-off. Right. And I was like, oh, like if you just told me to do it that way, oh, that was amazing. Right. Like, so, use those resources all the way around to find the right, like I want to do something kind of like this. And, let them guide you to where you can make the overall best business choices. So it's not just a fun promotion that sells, but you get the whole benefit all the way around.
That's a great example of one. And I want to now actually more lean into within the salon experience of, getting those rebooks and getting those consultations down so that you're getting more and more of this extension business. Do you have any, tips for stylists to improve the consultation, and then to, ensure higher ticket prices and more awareness of the extension services, and then just different touch points within once they are booked to make sure that they're coming back?
So I think in regard to the extension business, and it's interesting, I, as a hairstylist behind the chair, never did extensions. And it's probably because I started, in the Stone Age before many hairstylists now were even in business, but it just wasn't a big thing. It wasn't a thing that was happening readily at that time. However, I have built the extension business of many stylists, because I would consult with my clients. And I think as a salon owner, sometimes you start seeing things much more expansively because you see how everything affects everything, right? So when I would have a stylist who would say, I want to, specialize in extensions. And I'm like, okay, let's figure out how you can do that. Well, I'll just pull from my clientele first. And so I would find women who had, maybe they had, like, they were thinning right here. Maybe they had, issues wherever they were having issues. I think as a hairstylist, it's not as much how can I figure out how I can get this person into this as it is the more that you open yourself up to having conversations with women about the things that are in their wildest dreams, the things that they're saying to themselves in the mirror that they hate in the morning, the things that they feel and think about, the TikToks and the Instagrams and everything that they're looking at, like what are the things that you have been thinking about? And also, when you recognize and see things or hear them complain about things like, oh, my hair's so thin on the sides, or oh, my whatever, like that's your moment to be that professional in their lives, to offer them things they didn't even know to talk to you about and ask you about. And I think that's where the biggest gap is. It's not, you really don't have to go in for the hard sell. If you go in from a hard space of curiosity, every single guest that you sit with, they're going to open up and expand your mind. Like you're going to already find the nice, natural, like place to move that vehicle right into.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the conversations and opening up in service to your clients versus like, I'm trying to book all these appointments. It's like, no, I'm really here to serve the needs and understand. You may not hear that that's extensions, but that sounds like if you're a little frustrated with like your color or, your density, that really is actually an open door.
And I love your point. I mean, stylists today are so tactical with their questions. Like, where do you want your haircut? Where do you want your layers? Where do you want your bangs? I'm like, well, like, is this the drive-thru at McDonald's? Like, why does this matter? Right. But you were spot on, Ashley. It's about asking better questions. Right. And I love the curiosity phrase you used that, it's being, hard on with curiosity, not on with sales. Right. And if you spend more time being curious about what your client really wants. We joke about wants and needs, right? Do the want today, do the need later, because they'll come back for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the sweet sauce is. And I think I've got a stylist that works for me and she's like, gosh, my business is kind of, gotten kind of stagnant. How do I take it to the next level? And I'm like, well, what are the questions you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
And so we played a game last week and I said, I'm going to ask you to do something. Because if I ask you just to change one question, you're going to lean on what you always do, right? So I'm going to ask you to not ask anything you usually ask. So like write down the questions you usually ask and then now like take those away. You can't ask them anymore. Here's a list of 20, 30 questions. Pick 5. Like now we're doing all new questions this week. And it was amazing just to watch how much her business grew. Like, okay, was it uncomfortable?
Yeah.
But she came to me and she's like, oh my gosh, like I upgraded my first 3 clients like with big stuff and one couldn't do it today, but we booked it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, what'd that look like last week? She's like, I did what's on my book. And I'm like, right. So just, you're so spot on, Ashley. It's thinking of better questions and getting out of your routine.
I love that. And I think as we, kind of approach this time of year, the reason why we wanted to do this now was that you both offer, consulting and coaching practices. And I want to kind of highlight, your approaches or what, and not to say that you're special sauce, but what about this time of year is like, if we're making a pitch to our audience of like, why now? Why think about this ahead of 2026? Ashley, and then I'll have you continue. Like, what would you say is unique and special about starting to think about doing some type of coaching program or consulting now versus waiting?
I think I'm going to figure out exactly how to say this. So in our industry, it's really interesting to me. It's not just in our industry, it's probably a society thing. We have this sort of hard stop that happens on December 31st.
Yeah.
And we have this sort of start. It's like new phase of our life happens on January 1st.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I've already seen a lot of the posts and stuff. It's like, my prices are going up on January 1st. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why? Like, that's the new year, new you. Like, why are you telling everybody you're going to raise your prices on January 1st when everybody's going to be ready for a change, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be ready to find someone else to do their hair. But I think it's an any point thing. I think if there's something on your heart that you feel like you want to get stronger at, I'd highly recommend you get really clear on what you feel like first your business needs, like what needs to grow in your business or what needs to grow in you as a leader, so that when you're seeking out whoever you would work with and whatever you would do, that you're making the right choice instead of just falling for someone's marketing message. But knowing that there really isn't a right or wrong time to start, and the best time to start is as soon as you know that there is something that you need to expand and grow, it's time to go. Like it's time to do it immediately. So I think the most important thing, if I were to look just in the sense of we've got about 6 weeks left in the year, is that you can't grow 2026 and have an amazing year with no plan going into it. That's going to be a real hard challenge. So it's a really good time to start any type of program that you're going to move forward with at the end of a year, even if you feel like you're so busy, because it gives you a chance to actually start fresh at a time where you're probably going to have more time, but at least you know what you're starting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with what Ashley said. Now, I will say this is my favorite time of the year to start, although if you didn't wake up and realizing you should have,
Yeah.
anytime works.
Yeah.
But it's that planning process for the new year. And, you know, I own salons as well. I know it's a busy time. But I think when I do discovery consultations with clients and we take that next step, that first step is really about intake, right? It's about me getting to know you and getting to know your business. And so this is a great time of year because I can be doing that due diligence while you're doing clients, and we could do a 1-hour check-in and get started. And then we can start diving into, okay, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses? Because most salon owners that come to me don't have that answer up front. And so I end up doing a lot of partnership with them up front to kind of mine for that information or that data and really help them get going. And then I think it really just, you know, in picking the right person, it's really figuring out what your vibe and what your tribe is and what you're looking for. Are you looking for one system that's, you know, my whole life changes and I have to do this, right? Are you looking for someone who's going to, you know, like you mentioned, what's the one thing that's on your mind right now? Let's work on that and then take you through the process, right? There's so many different ways to coach. And I think it's finding that right partner that looks at you for who you are and who you are as a leader and what's the best system for you. And, you know, I shared one of my examples that my first coaching client wanted to grow their business, couldn't keep staff, but didn't want to change. Yeah. I'm like, why are we coaching? like, why'd you call? Like, how am I going to help? And what I learned is he really wanted help, but he's the same dude he's been for 50 years and never changed ever. Right. And so I really just had to take a moment to step back and go, how do I make processes and systems that work for that leader? Right. And I think, you know, talk to a couple, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. What's your vibe?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can relate from a business standpoint. Like I don't run salons, but we have a business operating framework that we work from. We do our strategic planning now. And it's good because even if you're going into like a quote unquote busy time of year, this is a good time to start noticing what isn't working during this busy time of year, noticing what you're noticing. And also just having, you know, I learned this from my mom. This, when you're super busy, it's one of the best times to just have that wish list of all the stuff that you see that you wish you could, but you don't have time because as soon as it slows down, it's really hard to think of all the things that you could do because you're like, why is it slow? You know, you're so stuck in that kind of switch that it's not an expansive time. So it's like,
and if you're still that crazy hairdresser like I am, mine is still a folder with a bunch of Post-it notes. So I think of things, I shove a Post-it note in because I'm not going to work on it now.
yeah, no,
But I
mine
shove it in there
is
so when I need the idea, I can go, whoa.
mine is like the crazy voice notes in my phone that like if anyone ever saw, it's like this thing like you get right out the shower. Like I wish we had time to do this, you know. And but that's the map. That's the road map for it. So I want to bring us back to the initial reason why we joined, which is inventory. I don't know if there's any questions around inventory. Okay, so I want each of you, I'm going to throw you on the spot and then we're going to take questions of just like, what is the one thing that extension focused salon, like what's the one thing you wish that they could just start implementing today to start, you know, becoming more profitable and data driven? I mean, this, that's a throwing you under the bus type
So
of
I'm
question,
gonna,
but like,
I'm
do you
gonna
wanna
answer it
take
on two
Okay.
sides.
Okay.
Number one, put everything in your system and track it.
Okay.
Right? So like every type of hair you order, by size, by length, track it. Right? It'll help create a roadmap for you. So that's kind of the data piece of
Okay.
it. On the flip side of it is how you build it into the conversation.
Okay.
Because I think clients, it isn't naturally always the first thing that people think of is extensions.
Mhm.
And so how do you make that part of every conversation? And I think one of the things that's been really powerful for the extension artists that work for me is to start talking look, not talking extensions.
Okay.
Right? And really think about, I mean, there's a whole group of people out there who just need volume. Like as we age, our hair is not the same. So if you can start asking the right questions and pairing it with a solution that creates a look, and the solution happens to include extensions.
Yeah.
I think that will help break through some of the walls if you're in a market that everybody doesn't already think extensions, to get them to see that it is such a world of possibilities, that is just insanely fabulous.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Those are two very actionable things. Ashley, to you.
100%. So this is actually going to be super simple, and it's just going to bounce off of what Allison said in both sides. So when you start logging things into your system so that you can track and you track the data, I'm going to make the recommendation that you think of yourself, or you grab a friend, or you grab an employee, or whoever is super hyper detail oriented, so that everything in the system is actually put in accurately. And that sounds
Yes,
like
yes.
such a small detail, but part of the problems that end up in with inventory systems and even ordering, the mistakes that happen in ordering happen because things are sloppily put in. Like we put it in like how we would talk about it instead of what it actually says on the manufacturer's sheet, which is super big help in everything that you're tracking. And then the other piece about like I think for a hairstylist, sometimes and we've sort of done this in the industry, we overcomplicate this consultation. And Allison, when you were talking about this, having a conversation and stop thinking about trying to like get them to do extensions and just like have a conversation about their hair, right? Like what's their overall feeling that they want to be having about themselves, or what's that overall outcome that they want to have. I'm going to make this suggestion that if you have a stool in your salon, or if you don't get one, and just sit down and have an eye-to-eye conversation before you get up and start playing with their hair.
Yep.
Because when you just have a conversation with someone, and in your client, I mean, you should see clients who have never had this happen before. They will literally like almost put their feet on the wall to stop you from turning the chair, because you want to turn them away from the mirror. They're so used to talking to the mirror that they'll try to stop you from doing it, but just tell them to relax. And then turn them away from the mirror and sit and talk to them face to face as you're going through this, because you will hear more about what they're actually feeling and wanting. And you also will feel less like we have to move on really quickly to have this conversation and get started on your hair. I'm going to talk about how this woman wants to feel in her hair. And if I have that conversation, a lot of the rest of that's going to happen naturally.
Agreed. And I just want to add one thing to
Yeah.
what you said about getting your person that's detail oriented. It triggered something for me. It's technology. Your vendor provides us an Excel spreadsheet. Give it to your software vendor and have them upload it.
Yes.
And you don't need fingers.
Yes, and they can reach out to, if you work with Covet and Main, we've had a lot of great vendors that do inventory. If they don't have the SKUs in, they can reach out to our team. We can provide the CSV or the data files, where like some of this is available. Like it's a very simple email where it does unlock a lot of, it's the whole concept of, and same thing in sales CRM. It's like garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
So data is only as good as it is consistently entered in, and because you can't measure things that are inconsistently inputted. So I think that's a key thing. And so it's very interesting because what I love both of you are talking about, and I think it's fairly timely conversation, but it's like, it's data driven. And I think a lot of stylists tend to run away from that, but it's also coupled with what both of you are saying. It's also a lot of conversation and like, I think even almost taking out the word consult,
Mhm.
you know, it's just sitting down, looking someone in the eyes and being like, let's talk about how you want to feel. And so it's connecting those two. So I'm really glad that you guys were able think what we're saying is they're both just as important. And I fear that the salon industry, it sometimes can become too data driven or too like bookings and book, you get away from the nature and the power of what a stylist is like a real partner. And like allowing women to be heard and having these conversations, because you're there to help.
Yep.
And they don't necessarily know the exact service what to ask for a lot of times even. And I think it's too much of like, what did you book for today? Let's go.
Joke and call it salt, same as last time.
Yeah, yeah. And then you end up and you're like, wait, 10 years have passed. I look the same and I don't feel the same that I did 10 years ago, but there's nobody here to help me explain, like, maybe you need gray balayage service versus, I don't know what that is, but like, leveraging your power and your expertise. So I love that we can connect that point. And then for questions, I want to make sure.
We have a question today from Matt. He asks, can you say more about investment versus costs? When consulting with a salon owner or business owner, what have you found is the best way to communicate this as effectively as possible?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat it just in case you didn't hear, but Matt was asking, wanted us to revisit the point that was brought up about investment versus cost and how do you, overcome business owners or salon owners' objections to understanding that balance between the two with inventory. Did I get that right? In the question, it was a
Investment versus cost.
Okay.
To consult with the salon.
how you manage consulting with them.
Think about just this one simple thing. If I'm buying something that I can sell, that's an investment, right? I can make money, or I can at least make my money back on it, right? If I buy toilet paper, not only can I guess I could sell it if it was a different time 5 years ago, I could probably sell it. But if it's going to be used, it is an expense, right? But if I can sell it, it is an investment because I can always make my money back on it. Or if it's a good that I can actually sell for more, then I can actually make money on it.
Yeah.
So think about it that way. And I always think about like, when I'm thinking about things that I am investing in, because I feel like this is the pushback that salon owners get, because sometimes we struggle with, but I don't have that money anymore. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who push the narrative of your inventory is costing you money in this industry currently. And it's there's a very angry narrative sort of around that I think has gotten us really distracted. But when I'm thinking about investing and I think about something, whether I think about the stock market, if I think about my down payment on my house and then my payments, like everything that's happening when I'm in that space, that money that I'm putting in there, could I technically, let's say, put my down payment on my house and go upside down because the housing market crashes and all of the housing, prices fall? Yeah, I absolutely could. But is that likely what is going to happen long term? Not really, right? Same thing with the stock market, depending upon, how you invest in all that stuff. But if you think about it more as when I buy something that I can resell, then I am making an investment. My money is staying with me. I'm just changing my money, right? My money still lives there. It's just in a different package. Versus if I buy something that's either consumable or that's going to be used, that's going to be more of a cost. So I can sit more firm and confident as long as I create a plan to communicate about that thing. I can sit more confident in making an investment because I'm actually still holding on to the money.
And I think it's a good point that you bring up too about investment. It's like, it's not buy everything. There's a big difference between buy what's going to move. And a lot of times it's a very narrow, targeted to your audience. You can look at, if you're looking at extensions, you kind of want to get a sense of what are you going to need to buy a lot of. Well, look at your color. It usually tends to be concentrated along certain SKUs, and you can kind of correlate your color to your extensions. And so I think also it's like, if you're looking to buy a house, you're thinking about it from an investment standpoint, something like waterfront with views is always going to be something like landlocked with no view. And so just being able to understand that there's different analysis of certain SKUs are always going to be an investment. I can tell you from the Covenant Maine point of which colors and what lengths that might be, but it's different for every business. Do you have any?
I know, I agree with her 100%. And I think, then it comes to the conversation of then tracking how that investment's working for you, right? Like, and what activity are you doing around that investment to get it to be a profitable one, right? So I can invest in something that I can resell, but then if I don't do anything with it,
Yes.
then it did become a cost, right? In some shape or other ways. So, I think that's where it's leverage your partners, right? Like if I'm gonna buy in, if I'm that salon that I'm doing a regular bit of extensions and I'm ordering and getting it in, but I feel like I'm making an order, every week, maybe it's time to up my investment, right? Now, if I'm gonna up my investment, how is my strategy going to level up as my investment levels up?
Yeah.
So that I can continue to create that momentum, whether it's with internal marketing I do, conversations with clients, external marketing that I do, partnering with, different businesses in the community and things like that have clients that might be down with whatever I'm choosing for my salon. So I think it's, there's a couple edges to that sword, but, you don't make money unless you spend money.
Yeah.
In other words as well.
And also, I think too, being mindful of, and this is like where the data-driven part is really important, is one thing I've observed from a lot of salons is that although a 26-inch, long dramatic install, it gets likes on Instagram, it catches eyeballs, but is it the most, it's not necessarily profitable, but like, where are you driving a most realistic, repeatable business? A lot of times that's going to come from a 14-inch install. And although that service the ticket may not be as much, the amount of that woman goes into a marketing presentation at work, everybody's like, she looks amazing. There's 15, the velocity of referrals, the amount of time that she's going to be coming back, and the nature of that client is probably the most, not to say profitable, but it's really driving a lot. And I think sometimes we tend to we look at the one-time ticket service, and there's lots of different ways that you can.
I can speak to that one personally. I mean, I had extensions installed a couple of months ago, and it's that, people, and again, I did it just for volume, right? It's the same length as my hair, but I have very baby fine hair. And, it's amazing how most people who know me know, ooh, it looks great.
Yeah.
They don't know what I did.
Yeah.
Right. And even in the salon, clients now seeing me that have seen me for 10 years are like, ooh, I'm like, let me tell
Yes.
you. And it's just amazing what that word of mouth does to realize, especially in a year, in a time when, 50 is the new 40 or 30,
Yes.
depending on who you talk to, and 60 is the new 20. I don't know. It just keeps getting younger. It is something that dials right into that audience right now. If you think about what all of the options are, not just mermaid hair, which is beautiful. And I love it. We all look at the pictures and think it's great, but there's opportunity there. That's for sure.
Yeah. I agree. So any other additional questions? None? Okay. Well, on this wrap up, this has been, I think we're all we would be really happy behind, just as much behind talking to a client as we would talking to a spreadsheet. So we could, go on and on. But I'm gonna kind of wrap it with 4 stylists who are interested, and just learning more about what you do, and how it might benefit them too. I'm a big believer. I've always had an entrepreneur coach, and I use a framework to operate and run our business. So I'm always an advocate for it. But I just want, if they're thinking about or curious, actually, if you could just kind of let us know, how can they learn more about you? What's the right next step if they were curious to work with you?
If they wanted to work with us, I would follow Fuse Republic. So that's my company. But follow Fuse Republic. There's a lot of information, even if you're not interested in working, there's a lot of information about retail-specific things. And we do talk about the profitability of other things that are outside of the service business, but we drop a little bit of the service business in as well. But so I do more specific, I would call it consulting, like topic-specific consulting than general coaching.
Okay.
Topic-specific consulting is focused mostly on areas of the business that add alternative revenue streams to the business instead of just the overall business, which we will help people get stronger in areas that they need to in order to focus on those things. But we do custom solutions versus here's our one-stop plug-in-play system, like some coaching and consulting companies.
And Allison, for you.
And I think, for me, the first place to start would be to come to our website or our online BD360consulting.com, or it's our Instagram as well. And a lot of information on the website, book a discovery consultation. We can talk more. We do a lot of coaching, whether it's stylist coaching, salon coaching, independent operator coaching. So whatever you're looking for to grow your business. And again, like Ashley said, we are certainly not one size fits all. I've run businesses with over 10,000 stylists. They're not all the same. How could every business be the same? And so while I have a system and I have a lot of tools that I think that have worked in salons across the country and in big chains, it's finding that right one for you to help you grow who you are and have the things that you want in life. So I think that message is loud and clear between both Ashley and myself.
I love, and I would implore as we go to the end of the year, I know it's very busy, and this is the last Academy 101 we're doing for the year for that reason. It's like, we know you're about to go into busy season, but we just want to remind you that, as we mentioned, we're more than a vendor. We really look to be a collaborative brand and be a partner. We do have so much data on, what works in your region, things that you might not be thinking. And I think, just to Harold, there's some really, I think a lot of times there's a couple of salons that I can always think of that I always go to are not in markets that make sense, not in, you don't necessarily fit like what you think of, but they just have figured out, they've made the right investments. They've made the right investments in education and consultation and team and products and brands. And it's shocking, sometimes the numbers that they do. And without ever breaking their confidence, we just have this bird's eye view data. And when you win, we win. And so I think a lot of times people with their vendors don't look in partnership enough and see that, like, the more that we can all come together. And sometimes, we can't always say yes to everything, but there's a lot of ways that we can figure out eventually how to get there. And so I just implore you to reach out to, as we build out our sales team for Covet & Main this year, reach out to us, reach out to our concierge team. There's just a lot of ways that we want to be able to make this more profitable and be able to have something where, you enjoy it and you love your clients and you love your salon, but it also loves you back.
Yep,
Absolutely. So with that spirit, I hope you guys have a great busy season, and we'll be picking up more Academy 101 in the new year. We have some really good topics coming up. And so it's just, been a pleasure. And I really thank you so much, Ashley. It's been so nice having this conversation with you. And as well, Allison, so thank you.
Thank you.